The smell of leather and old paper filled the probate courtroom as I sat beside my attorney, my hands folded tightly in my lap to keep them from shaking. I was 68 years old, and 3 months after my husband Thomas passed away, I found myself fighting his own sister for the home we'd shared for 42 years. Carol sat across the aisle with her attorney, Mr. Brennan, looking smug. Too smug for someone who was about to lose. Then it happened. The moment that changed everything. "Excuse me, Your Honor," a young voice said from the back of the courtroom. "May I show you something about my grandma that the court needs to see?" I turned to see my 4-year-old grandson Danny standing up, his phone clutched in his hands. My daughter Rebecca looked just as shocked as I was. The judge, a man in his early 60s with reading glasses perched on his nose, looked up from his papers. "And who might you be, young man?" "Danny Chen, sir. Helen's grandson. I recorded some things over the past few months. Things Aunt Carol didn't know I was recording." "Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate," Mr. Brennan protested, rising halfway from his seat. "We're here to determine Mrs. Chen's competency to manage her late husband's estate, not to entertain recordings from children." Judge Matthews held up his hand. "I'll decide what's appropriate in my courtroom. Come forward, son." When Danny tapped his phone and the audio started playing, Carol's confident expression crumbled. As my sister-in-law's voice filled the courtroom, plotting and scheming in her own words, her face turned from tan to absolutely ashen. "But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. 4 months earlier, I had been sitting in the sunroom of the house Thomas and I bought in 1982, the house in Riverside, Connecticut, with the big oak tree in the front yard and the garden I'd tended for 4 decades. Thomas had died 6 weeks prior. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and brutal. We'd had 42 years together. Not enough, but what time ever is? I was drinking my morning tea, Earl Grey with a splash of milk, the way I'd done every morning since I retired from the Riverside Public Library 3 years ago. The house felt too quiet without Thomas. Too empty. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:47 a.m. I knew because the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed the 3/4 hour just as I stood up. It was Carol. "Helen, we need to talk about the house," she said before I'd even fully opened the door. "No good morning. No how are you holding up, just straight to business." Carol was Thomas's younger sister by 3 years, which made her 65. She'd never married, never had children, and had spent her career as a hospital administrator in Boston. She'd always been exacting. Thomas used to say she could organize chaos itself into alphabetical order. "What about the house?" I asked, stepping aside to let her in. "Thomas and I discussed his wishes extensively before he passed," she said, walking into the living room like she owned it. "He was concerned about your ability to manage such a large property at your age. The maintenance, the expenses, the decision-making required." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Thomas never said anything like that to me. "Of course he didn't. He didn't want to upset you." Carol sat down on the sofa, crossing her ankles in that prim way she had. "But he and I talked about it many times. He wanted me to help you transition to something more suitable. A nice senior living community, perhaps. Or a small condo." "This is my home, Carol. Was your home, Helen. Thomas's will leaves the property in trust, with me as trustee, for your protection." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "That's not possible. We had our wills done together 5 years ago. Everything was supposed to go to me, then to Rebecca when I pass." Carol smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Thomas updated his will 8 months ago. I have the paperwork. He was worried about your mental clarity. You're 68, Helen. At that age, cognitive decline can happen rapidly." "I don't have cognitive decline." "That's exactly what someone with early dementia would say." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "The will goes to probate next month. I suggest you start looking at senior facilities. I've already picked out a few nice options for you." After she left, I sat in Thomas's chair and cried. Not because I believed her about the will. Thomas would never have done that without telling me, but because I realized my sister-in-law was willing to lie about my dead husband's wishes to take my home. I called Rebecca that evening. She was 40, a pediatric nurse like I'd been before I became a librarian, divorced, raising Danny on her own in Hartford, about 40 minutes away. "Mom, that's insane," Rebecca said when I told her. Dad would never have changed his will without telling you. I know. But Carol seems very confident. We need to get a lawyer. Today. That's how I met Miss Martinez. Elena Martinez was 52, sharp as a tack, with kind brown eyes and no-nonsense attitude. Her office was small but organized, much like she was. Mrs. Chen, she said at our first meeting, tell me everything from the beginning. I did. The marriage, Thomas's death, Carol's visit, the claim about a new will. Have you seen this alleged new will? No, Carol just said it existed. Miss Martinez made notes on her yellow legal pad. The will from 5 years ago. Do you have a copy? Yes. Everything to me, then to Rebecca. Good. We'll need that. Now, has Carol shown any other concerning behavior? Pressure about finances? Access to accounts? Anything like that? I thought about it. She asked for Thomas's bank statements 3 weeks ago, said she needed them for the estate. I gave them to her because I thought she was trying to help. Miss Martinez's pen paused. Did Thomas have any assets in his name only? The retirement account from his job at the architecture firm. About $400,000, and the house is worth maybe $850,000 now. So over $1 million total. Miss Martinez leaned back. Mrs. Chen, I think your sister-in-law is attempting to exploit your grief and trust to gain control of your late husband's estate. The question is whether she's forged a new will, or if Thomas actually made one under duress or undue influence. Thomas was sick, but he was sharp until the end. He would have told me if he changed anything. Then we fight. First thing tomorrow, I'm filing a petition to see this alleged new will. If it exists, we'll challenge it. If it doesn't, we'll expose the fraud. The will did exist. That was the shocking part. Dated 8 months earlier, witnessed by 2 people I'd never heard of, leaving the house and all assets in a trust with Carol as trustee. It gave me a living allowance of $2,000 a month and placed me under Carol's financial guardianship due to concerns about competency. This is my husband's signature, I told Miss Martinez, staring at the document in her office. But he never would have signed this. Did he sign anything 8 months ago that you know of? I thought back. Last March. He signed refinancing papers for the house. The mortgage company sent someone to the house because Thomas was too weak to go to the bank. Carol was there that day. She said she wanted to help, to witness the signing. Miss Martinez's eyes sharpened. Did you read what Thomas signed that day? No. The representative had multiple documents. Thomas was tired. Carol said she'd reviewed everything, and it was standard refinancing paperwork. Helen, I think your husband unknowingly signed this will thinking it was part of the refinancing. The witnesses were probably people Carol brought, maybe even employees of hers. We need to prove it. But proving it was harder than we thought. The witnesses had moved, one to Florida, one to California. Both claimed they didn't remember the specifics, just that Thomas Chen had signed willingly and seemed a bit confused but generally aware. Carol filed a counterpetition arguing that I was incompetent to challenge the will, citing my advanced age, recent memory lapses, and inability to manage complex financial matters. She had statements from her friends, people who'd met me maybe twice at family gatherings, claiming I'd seemed forgetful and disoriented. Mrs. Brenner from the church said I'd forgotten the name of the new pastor. I hadn't forgotten. We'd gotten a new pastor that month, and I simply hadn't learned his name yet. Dr. Richardson, Carol's personal physician, submitted a report suggesting that based on Mrs. Chen's age and recent behavioral patterns, cognitive assessment would be prudent. It felt like the ground was disappearing under my feet. I was 68, healthy, sharp, still doing the crossword puzzle every morning, still reading 3 books a week. But Carol was building a narrative that I was a confused old woman who needed her protection. They're doing to you what abusers always do, Miss Martinez explained during one of our meetings. Gaslighting on paper, making normal things seem suspicious, making you doubt yourself. It's working, I admitted. I started second-guessing myself yesterday, wondering if maybe I am forgetting things. You're not. I've worked with you for 6 weeks now. You remember every detail, every date, every conversation. You're sharper than half my clients half your age. The preliminary hearing was set for August 15th. Judge Matthews would determine whether Carol's petition for guardianship had merit, whether the will should be probated as valid, and whether I should undergo cognitive evaluation. I moved in with Rebecca and Danny 2 weeks before the hearing. Partly because I needed the support, partly because Carol had started coming by the house unannounced, always with that concerned expression, always asking if I'd remembered to take my medications, even though I wasn't on any medications except for blood pressure pills. "She's setting up a pattern," Rebecca said, "building evidence that you need supervision." Danny was quieter about it all. He was 14, starting high school in the fall, tall for his age with his father's Korean features and his mother's blue eyes. He spent a lot of time on his phone, which I'd always found a bit worrying, but Rebecca said it was normal for his age. What I didn't know was that Danny had been documenting everything. 2 weeks before the hearing, Carol came to Rebecca's house. She knocked on the door at 4:30 p.m., right when Rebecca was still at work and I was helping Danny with his algebra homework at the kitchen table. "Aunt Carol," Danny said when he opened the door, his phone already in his pocket. Later, I'd learn it was recording. "Danny, sweetheart. Is your grandmother here?" "In the kitchen." Carol walked in like she owned Rebecca's house too. "Helen, we need to talk." "I don't think we have anything to discuss, Carol. My attorney says I shouldn't speak with you without her present." "This isn't about the legal nonsense." She sat down at the table, uninvited. "This is about what's best for you. You're not well, Helen. You may not see it, but I do. Thomas saw it too, before he died. That's why he made me promise to take care of you." "Thomas didn't make you promise anything." "He did. The night before he went into hospice, he called me. He said, 'Carol, Helen's not going to be able to manage alone. Promise me you'll watch out for her. Make sure she doesn't make any foolish decisions.'" "That's a lie." "Is it? Or do you just not remember?" "Memory gaps are common at your age, Helen. It's nothing to be ashamed of." I stood up, my hands trembling with anger. "Get out of my daughter's house. I'm trying to help you. Once the judge sees the evidence, once he orders the cognitive evaluation and it shows what we already know, you'll be placed under my care. It'll be easier for everyone if you just accept it now." "Evidence of what?" Carol smiled. "Dr. Richardson is prepared to testify. So are the witnesses from church, Mrs. Brenner, Mr. and Mrs. Hastings, even your old colleague from the library, Patricia Morton. They've all noticed the decline." "Patricia Morton. I'd worked with her for 20 years. We'd had coffee just last month." "Patricia would never say that." "She already has. In a sworn statement. She noted how you forgot where you'd shelved books, how you'd ask the same questions repeatedly, how concerned everyone was about you in those last few years before you retired. None of that was true. I'd retired because I wanted to spend time with Thomas before his health declined. My mind was fine. If you fight this, Helen, it's just going to be harder. The judge will see a stubborn old woman in denial, but if you work with me, we can make this easy. I'll find you a nice place to live. Nothing too expensive, of course. We need to preserve the estate for." She paused. "Well, for the future. For you? You mean, I'm the trustee. That money will be managed properly. That money is mine. Thomas earned it for us, for our family, not for you." Carol stood up, gathering her purse. "We'll see what the judge says. Danny, be a dear and take good care of your grandmother. She needs all the help she can get these days." After she left, I sat back down at the table, my hands still shaking. Danny was quiet, his phone now sitting innocently on the table beside his algebra book. "You okay, Grandma?" he asked softly. "No, sweetheart. I'm not." What I didn't know was that Danny had recorded the entire conversation, and 6 others before that. The hearing arrived on a humid August morning. Rebecca drove me to the courthouse, Danny quiet in the back seat. Miss Martinez met us outside, her briefcase in hand. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Terrified." "Don't be. We have truth on our side." But as we sat in that courtroom, listening to Carol's attorney present their case, truth felt awfully flimsy against the wall of lies they'd constructed. Mr. Brennan had statements, medical opinions, testimony from people I barely knew. He painted a picture of a confused, declining woman who couldn't be trusted with her own affairs. Mrs. Chen forgot her own phone number when asked by Mrs. Brenner, he said. I hadn't forgotten. I'd gotten a new phone and was still learning the number. Mrs. Chen became disoriented at the grocery store, unable to find items she'd purchased for decades. They'd rearranged the entire store 3 months ago. Everyone was disoriented. Mrs. Chen's own colleague from the library noted significant memory impairment in the 2 years before retirement. Patricia's statement, read aloud, was devastating. It described incidents I didn't remember because they'd never happened, a version of me that I didn't recognize. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan concluded, we're not here to punish Mrs. Chen. We're here to protect her. Her late husband recognized the need for this protection and made provisions accordingly. We ask that you honor his wishes and place Mrs. Chen under appropriate guardianship. Judge Matthews looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Chen, how do you respond to these allegations? I stood up, Miss Martinez beside me. Your Honor, I'm not losing my mind. I'm 68, not 98. I remember everything. I manage my own affairs. This is about my sister-in-law wanting control of my husband's estate, not about my well-being. Do you have evidence to support that claim? That's when Danny stood up. Excuse me, Your Honor. May I show you something about my grandma that the court needs to see? Judge Matthews allowed it. Danny walked forward, his phone in hand, Rebecca following protectively. I got worried about Grandma about 3 months ago, Danny explained, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Aunt Carol kept coming around, saying weird things about Grandma being confused and forgetful. But Grandma wasn't confused. She helped me with homework, remembered everyone's birthdays, beat me at Scrabble every single time. So I started recording Aunt Carol when she'd visit. Just in case. He tapped his phone and Carol's voice filled the courtroom. Don't worry about Helen figuring it out. She's too far gone to piece anything together. By the time she realizes what's happening, she'll already be in Meadowbrook Senior Living and I'll have full control of the accounts. A woman's voice I didn't recognize. But what if she fights it? She won't. I've got enough statements from people to paint her as incompetent, and Dr. Richardson's report will seal it. He owes me a favor anyway. I got his son that job at the hospital. The courtroom was silent. Judge Matthews leaned forward. When was this recorded? 2 months ago? Danny said. Aunt Carol came to our house when Mom was at work. She was on the phone in the living room. I was upstairs, but I started recording because it sounded bad. Your Honor, this is outrageous, Mr. Brennan sputtered. That recording was taken without consent. In a home where Mrs. Chen had no expectation of privacy, Judge Matthews said coldly. Continue, young man. Danny played another recording. Carol's voice again, this time talking to someone else. Patricia, I need you to do me a favor. Remember Helen Chen from the library? I need you to write a statement about her mental decline before she retired. But Carol? Helen was fine. She retired because she wanted to spend time with Thomas. I know that. But we need it to look like she was struggling. I'll write something up. You just sign it. Nobody's going to check. And I'll make it worth your while. That consulting position at St. Mary's Hospital you wanted? I can make that happen. My hands flew to my mouth. Patricia hadn't betrayed me. She'd been coerced. Danny played a third recording, then a fourth. In each one, Carol was orchestrating the fraud, coaching witnesses, promising favors, planning how to manipulate the proceedings. In one, she even coached the witnesses from the will signing. If anyone asks, you say Thomas seemed weak but aware. Say he told you he wanted to protect Helen from herself. That's it. Keep it simple. The final recording was from 2 weeks ago. Carol at Rebecca's house. The conversation I'd lived through, but hearing it again in the context of everything else was damning. Once the judge sees the evidence, once he orders the cognitive evaluation, and it shows what we already know, you'll be placed under my care. Judge Matthews's face had progressed from professional neutrality to barely contained fury. He looked at Carol, who had gone completely pale. Miss Carol Chen, did I just hear you admit to orchestrating fraud upon this court? Carol's attorney was frantically whispering to her, but she seemed unable to speak. Your Honor, that was taken out of context, Mr. Brennan tried. Out of context? The judge's voice could have frozen water. She admitted to coercing false statements, bribing witnesses, and planning to defraud her sister-in-law out of her inheritance. What context makes that acceptable? There are more, Danny said quietly. She talked to Uncle Frank about it too, about how the house would be hers once Grandma was taken care of. She was planning to sell it. He played one more. Carol's voice, casual and cold. Frank, the house is worth $850,000. Once Helen's in managed care, We sell it, split the money. She'll never know the difference. And with the retirement accounts, we're looking at over $1 million. Thomas worked his whole life for that money. It shouldn't go to waste on someone who can't even appreciate it. I felt tears running down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of relief, vindication. Judge Matthews turned to Mr. Brennan. Counselor, I strongly suggest you withdraw from this case immediately before I refer you to the Bar Association for sanctions. He looked at Miss Martinez. As for the petition for guardianship, it's denied. Completely and unequivocally denied. Then he looked at Carol. Miss Chen, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. You've admitted, in your own words, to multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. I'm also ordering a full investigation into the will dated 8 months ago. If it's found that you orchestrated that signing under false pretenses, you'll face additional charges. Your Honor, please, Carol started to stand. Sit down. I'm not finished. Judge Matthews's voice was ice. I'm also issuing a restraining order. You are to have no contact with Helen Chen, Rebecca Chen, or Danny Chen. If you violate this order, you will be arrested immediately. He turned to me. Mrs. Chen, I apologize that you've had to endure this. Based on everything I've seen and heard today, you are clearly of sound mind and fully capable of managing your own affairs. The will from 5 years ago, leaving everything to you, will be probated as your husband's valid final testament. I couldn't speak. I could only nod. And Danny, the judge said, looking at my grandson with something like admiration, you may have saved your grandmother from a terrible injustice. Thank you for having the courage to document the truth. Danny looked at me, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Grandma. I was scared nobody would believe me. But I heard her planning it, and I knew I had to do something. I stood up and hugged him. This tall one, 4-year-old boy who'd protected me when I didn't even know I needed protecting. You did the right thing, sweetheart. You did exactly the right thing. The formal will proceedings 3 weeks later were anticlimactic. Carol didn't appear. Her attorney had withdrawn. The investigation into the forged will revealed that she'd indeed slipped it into the refinancing paperwork, that the witnesses were former hospital employees she'd supervised, and that Thomas had never known what he was signing that day. The district attorney filed charges: fraud, forgery, attempted elder exploitation, and perjury. Carol pled guilty to avoid trial, receiving 3 years probation, a $75,000 fine, and a permanent record. She'd never work in healthcare administration again. The house was mine. The retirement accounts were mine. Everything Thomas had worked for remained in our family, exactly as he'd intended. That was 4 months ago. I'm 68 years and 7 months old now, still living in the house in Riverside with the big oak tree in the garden. Rebecca and Danny come over every Sunday for dinner. Danny's thriving in high school, talking about becoming a lawyer to help people like me. I've started volunteering at the library again, teaching computer skills to other seniors. I joined a book club. I'm taking a watercolor class at the senior center, not because I need to be around other seniors, but because I enjoy painting. Last week, I ran into Patricia Morton at the grocery store. She apologized with tears in her eyes, explaining how Carol had pressured her, promising her the consulting job, making it seem like a small favor. I knew it was wrong, Patricia said, but I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. I'm so sorry, Helen. You didn't sign the statement in the end, did you? No. I couldn't do it. Even with the job offer, I couldn't lie about you like that. I forgave her. Because holding on to anger would be like letting Carol win, even a little bit. Sometimes I think about those months when Carol was building her case, slowly surrounding me with lies, making me question my own mind, how insidious it was. How easily it could have worked if not for a 4-year-old boy with a phone and the courage to use it. I keep Danny's phone recording app on my own phone now. Not because I expect more trouble, but as a reminder that the truth is worth protecting. That sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. That love means protecting those you care about, even when they don't know they need it. I'm 68 years old. I'm a widow. I'm a grandmother. I'm a homeowner. I'm sharp as I've ever been. And I'm living the life Thomas and I planned together, honoring his memory by refusing to be diminished or controlled. Carol sent a letter last month. A non-apology wrapped in self-justification, claiming she'd only wanted what was best for me, that things had gotten out of hand. I didn't respond. Some people never learn, but I did learn. I learned that getting older doesn't mean getting weaker. I learned that family doesn't automatically mean loyalty. I learned that a 4-year-old with a smartphone can be braver than adults 3 times his age. And I learned that it's never too late to fight for what's yours, to stand up for yourself, to refuse to be made small by someone else's greed. The oak tree in my front yard is starting to turn colors now. Fall in Connecticut is beautiful. Thomas and I used to sit on the porch every autumn evening, watching the leaves change, planning the garden for next spring. I still sit on that porch. The chair beside me is empty, but the house is full. Full of memories, full of love, full of family who actually cares. Danny comes over on weekends to help with yard work. Rebecca and I have movie nights on Fridays. My life didn't end when Thomas died. It didn't end when Carol tried to take everything. If anything, it began again. A new chapter, written by me, on my terms. I'm 68 years old. I'm free, and I'm just getting started.